McGrath, your host. It is the 24th of July, Tuesday. And if we look around and look at the headlines of the day, we see the same continuation that we've been treated to for the last 4 years. We see more fear that we're going to go off the financial cliff, that we're about to step on a debt landmine. And, again, we see Europe being taken from bad to worse, but all on the hopes of the next bailout, of the next bank deal, of the next saving, optimistic bailout. And the question that I have is, when are we going to realize that none of these are going to work? I mean, there is a solution. There's a solution, which is we rid the system of this debt. We let countries default, because inevitably that's what's going to happen anyway. But consolidating these countries and consolidating their debt and spreading this debt out is never going to work. Now, joining us now is he is my favorite commentator on current economic events. He was one of the very first newsletters that I subscribed to. The New York Times calls him the New York Times 10th annual year in ideas, number one idea for do-it-yourself macroeconomics. Time Magazine calls him best 25 financial blog. Bloomberg financial blog, best of the bunch. CNBC, best alternative financial website. And best business blog 2011 says Strategist News. So it's my pleasure to welcome to the first time for the show, Mike MISH Shedlock. Mike, welcome to the program.
That's a pleasure to be on the show, Charlie. Happy to join you.
Well, let's get into it a little bit. I mean, some of your articles, I get your newsletter every day, and I guess we should make that announcement. I'm sure you have millions of people who are subscribed to it, but if I want to subscribe to MISH's Global Economic Trend Analysis, how do I do that?
Just do a Google search for MISH, M-I-S-H. It's really just the first two characters of my first and last name. But rather than try and remember globaleconomicanalysis.blogspot.com, I suggest doing a Google search for MISH is a lot easier. Yeah. And in the upper left-hand corner, there is a subscribe by email, and you can subscribe to that. I get a couple million page hits a month. And my subscription, by the way you're doing it, by FeedBurner, is a lot less. It's about 50,000 readers or so.
That's still quite a number, and you do put out information every single day, and it isn't just you're not just aggregating news. You're doing actual writing. I don't know how you time.
I provide my own commentary. That's true. And how do I do it? By spending about 12, 14 hours a day at it. However, I love doing this. I really do. I'm having a blast doing this and poking fun at economists who are making these calls. I did a post on Germany today, for example. Yeah. Christine Lagarde, that's the head of the IMF in January, came out and said that there was a chance that Europe would not go into recession this year. I looked at it at the time, and I'm not saying this in retrospect. At time, I wrote a blog post. I said that's one of the stupidest things that anyone said all year. Of course, we were only 9 days into the year, but since then, I mean, look what's happened. I mean, Spain is imploding, Italy's imploding, Greece is continuing imploding, France is in recession, and now Germany's in recession. So, my gosh, what were these people thinking? That's what I'm wondering.
Well, it does make you wonder. It does make you wonder if it's, I've seen it maybe from a little more conspiratorial point of view. I see every time that they announce a solution, and there's been 19 meetings in Brussels to fix the European debt crisis, and every time they come out, they talk about this is a sustainable solution. They edge closer towards this financial governance over Europe, not just having a parliament in Brussels that can pay lip service to steering the policy of nations.
That's what they want. They want this financial governance. Excuse me. Germany wants it. Spain doesn't want it. Spain just wants the money. And, Greece doesn't want it. Greece just wants the money. Portugal, Italy, they just want the money. They don't want this governance. They just want Germany to feed me more money. Well, Germany says, no, we can't do that. we have to have a political union before there's a fiscal union. Meanwhile, all the Euro states, the Southern European states, say no. We want a fiscal union before we can have a political union. Meanwhile, the German Constitutional Court says, well, wait a second, you're not going to do either of those unless we put it to a vote of a referendum of German voters. So essentially,
and they're never going to do that.
You can't get there from here. That's exactly right, Charlie. That's exactly it.
Let me ask you, Mike. I mean, if it's obvious that they can't get there, even in these extreme financial times, right? Europe's in a lot of trouble. I mean, you have hundreds of thousands of Spanish folks in the streets protesting austerity. You have people in Greece, blowing their own head off in the middle or in front of Parliament.
Yeah, that's really sad.
Yeah, it's a sad deal. And then now you have Italy, and I'll get into that in a minute. But Italy saying, you know what, forget this, we want to go back to the lira. How, when Wolfgang Schäuble whispers in Merkel's ear a year and a half ago, we're going to, a lot like we've heard from, politicians around this country, where they say we're not going to waste this crisis. Well, Merkel had a little message from Wolfgang Schäuble saying we're going to use this to consolidate, even though it's going to go strictly against the German Constitution. We'll use this to consolidate some of this power inside of the Eurozone, these 17 nations that use the euro as their currency. How on earth, in the midst of all this turmoil and chaos that we see right now, Mike, how can they get this done?
Well, they can't. Here's the deal. If you can't get it done when times are good, you're not going to be able to get these agreements when times are bad. I mean, just look at what's going on in France right now. Hollande is taking things in the opposite direction. He wants to make it harder for corporations to fire people. It isn't, in fact, not only the harder, he's got a proposal that says he wants to make it impossible for them to fire people unless they dissolve their corporation and sell it to someone else. Good grief. If you can't fire employees, how does anyone think that corporations are going to hire them in the first place? France is really poised to implode here. I mean, very quickly. And no one even sees it. No one's even talking about it. The only place you can talk about this is a couple of us bloggers that are talking about this. You're not seeing this on the mainstream media. You're not seeing what's happening in Italy on mainstream media. These guys never heard of Beppe Grillo. They've not heard of the Five-Star Movement. They've not heard of events that are critical, that are happening in Italy and Spain right now. No one's talking about them. These things ought to be front-page news in the Wall Street Journal. Instead, they're bylines on my blog.
No doubt about it. I mean, you really do have to search. You have to sift through the fluff to find out what's going on. If you subscribe to the mainstreams, at least the business mainstream media, the solution is always the next meeting is going to usher in the next solution. Maybe it's the ESM is going to be converted to go directly into banks. We had all kind of hope and optimism come out of that back in June, and then we find out, there's 17 nations, there's 17 governments inside of Europe that all have to pass this before anything can be done. So my fear is this. I mean, we're going to end up, first of all, I don't think most Americans realize how tied at the hip we are to the European sovereign debt and the European sovereign debt crisis.
Most people don't. That, do you think the average person in the United States can find Spain on a map? I'm serious here. At least in Europe, they know everything that's going on in the United States. They know all about President Obama. They know about Mitt Romney. The average person in the United States could not tell you who the Chancellor of Germany is. Do you think they could? I seriously don't think they could find Spain on a map. Who was it? Jay Leno. I don't know if you've ever seen these talk shows where he goes around and he does these things. And he makes people look like complete fools. But he took a globe last year and he labeled Australia, New Zealand, and New Zealand, Australia on this globe. He had a special globe printed up, and he spun it around and he asked people, "Can you find Australia on a map?" And of course, they pointed to New Zealand because that's what, he put the label. He put the names on Australia and New Zealand. People in the United States are not aware of what's going on in Europe at all.
No, and you know what, though? I agree with that. I mean, I do this show every single night and talk to people all over this country, and I travel to Canada quite a bit for my real job. And it's amazing to me when I sit down with Canadian at dinner, in a business dinner, how in tune they are to the political situation here, not only the political situation, but the economic situation here and in Europe. And I mean, it is a culture of a pop culture phenomenon. We care about the next Dancing with the Stars or You Could Be a Millionaire or whatever.
We get our news from the Talk or any number of other shows like that.
Infotainment.
It's silly.
It is silly, and it's sad. Well, I guess if we can use that word, because everybody who is in the dark, I think, Mish, and I want your opinion on this, is about to be woken up. And I don't know if it's a year. I don't know if it's 5 years down the road. I do know that this sovereign debt issue, we saw the 2008 debt issue of, a lot of the too big to fails, and how that was gobbled up by the Federal Reserve and now has become part of our sovereign debt. But we're under this illusion that the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, they can just, paper over it or get interest rates down to zero and we'll grow our way out of it. But it certainly doesn't seem like that is in the cards anytime soon. In fact, quite to the contrary, it seems as if we were about to go off a financial cliff that'll make 2008 look pretty rosy in comparison. I guess my question to you would be, do you have that same opinion? And if so, how long? I mean, can we string this on for another decade?
There's two questions here I sense, and one of them has to do with the stock market. The other one has to do with the economy. And if you're wealthy enough and you've got a lot of money in the stock market is the economy, but that's not a very large percentage of the population. For the average guy on the street, the economy, the real economy is the economy, not the stock market is the economy. And from the point of view of the real guy on the street, I did a post in, I can't remember the year, I'm going to say 2008, perhaps 2009, and it was called Structurally High Unemployment for a Decade. And I looked at the situation then, and I said, anyone thinks that they're going to be able to paper this thing over is mistaken. Well, they papered the stock market over. They papered the artificial economy over, actually, quite frankly, more than I thought they could. But they did it. They did it once. I don't know if they can do it again. But businesses still aren't hiring. People are in worse shape. Bernanke's trying to inflate the price of houses. He's failed. However, he's inflated the price of oil, which people have to buy to put in their cars to drive to work. He's inflated the price of food. He's, of course, we have some drought issues. We've got some other issues here. It's not all just Bernanke. In fact, central bankers throughout the world have gotten together and pumped up the supply of money, and in no place is there robust job creation. Rather, we've instead have record low yields that are destroying everyone on fixed income because prices are still, going up, yet their pay is going up less than prices are, and home prices are finally stabilizing. But my God, we're going to see poor housing and poor housing formation for another decade. We're going to see poor jobs for a decade. And Bernanke actually did, I can't remember, it was an interview somewhere, he said, or one of those seminars or whatever he goes to, that he couldn't figure out why his policies weren't working. And I think, good grief, why didn't he pick up the phone and talk to someone in the real economy about the debt overhang, the student debt, loan debt that can possibly be paid off, people heading demographic issue. Boomers are heading into retirement. They've not saved enough money for their retirement. and he wants them to go out and take more debt? Yeah, the guy is nuts. He really is. He's nuts. He's looking at things. He's looking at this not if this is a debt-sponsored recession we're in. Actually, I believe we're in a depression. But rather, this is this normal business cycle that all he's got to do is print a little money and things are going to go back to normal. It's just not going to happen. The guy's in fantasy land.
Absolutely. But do you really think that Ben Bernanke, the great student of the 30s depression, do you really think that they believe that their policies and they're gearing their policy to what you described as the real economy? Because it seems to all the world, just by the results, the proof is in the pudding. The institutions that are saved are not the job-creating small businesses across the country, not the assets that the middle class hold on to for dear life that builds their asset base, which is typically has been your home. They're falling in value, and we'll see if they're bottoming out now. It would make sense since they've fallen more now percentage-wise from the high than they did in the Great Depression. But it seems for all the world that it's all about cronyism. It's all about this finance-based capitalism or finocracy, where these institutions have become so big, so behemoth that we can't let them fail. They're the only ones being served by this policy. Am I seeing it wrong?
Perhaps in a way. Is that what's going on? Yes. If you're implying is there a conspiracy to do that? No, I'm not sure that that's what you're implying, though. But there are a lot of people that actually believe that Bernanke is doing this on purpose. I don't think Bernanke is doing this on purpose. I think Bernanke really believes in what he's doing. He's just a misguided fool. That's it. I'm a big fan of Occam's razor, and Occam's razor, my definition of that is the simple solution is more than likely the one to be correct. So, we can have these theories, for example, that Bernanke is in with it, with Diamond, with the bankers, with the Bilderbergs, with everyone to conspire to collapse the global economy for the benefit of, I'm not sure who, the banks and the wealthy, or we can believe that Bernanke is simply an economic dunce, okay? I'm going to believe that Bernanke is an economic dunce. There is no big conspiracy here. However, as with the case of LIBOR, let's look at LIBOR. I don't think there was a conspiracy in LIBOR either. I don't think banks called up each other and said, you know what? Well, let's get together and rig LIBOR down because, that's what we need to do. Rather, I think that all of these banks said, you know what? It's good for me if I underreport LIBOR. So they underreported interest rates. So they were all looking out for themselves. They're all liars and cheats, but there was no conspiracy. They didn't call each other and conspire to do this. They're all crooks. I'm not going to say that wrong. I think they belong in prison. But, we need to separate these conspiracy ideas from the other aspects of it.
No, I see where you're going with that, and I'm probably falling more towards not as much conspiracy as the open door, rotating door policy between Washington and Wall Street, where you have gunslinger Hank Paulson sitting at the head of Goldman Sachs, and then he's Treasury Secretary. When TARP comes out, you see our current Treasury Secretary sitting at the head of the New York Fed, and now we got Geithner appointed as the head of Treasury, and certainly a nation of 310 million people, this handful of those in the know seem to be consistently showing up.
Well, none of the no, actually the handful of those in the money, because that's what's happening here. The people that are wealthy are buying themselves political influence. They're donating millions of dollars, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. In one case, I think I saw, one person was, and I forget who this was, but some billionaire was considering giving $100 billion to Romney to help him get elected. Well, guess what? I mean, this person is going to buy influence. He's going to get the things that he wants done. $10 billion
Absolutely.
is a lot of freaking money, and all of these people, it's influence peddling. It's
Yes.
the best.
Well, hold on a sec, Mike. We're going to do our one and only break in this interview. We're going to do that, and we'll be back with Mike MISH Shedlock. We talked about where we're at, and I want to pick Mike's brain on how we can get out of this mess, what he thinks are some key solutions. We'll be back in 5.5 minutes. Hang tight. And Mike MISH Shedlock is our guest. Guys in the chat room, I wrote down a bunch of your questions, and I'll try to get into these before the end of the program. We have about 24 minutes or so left, so hopefully we can address some of these questions. One of them I'm going to go right off the bat with to Mike, which is Mish. Yeah, do you see the Yankees having another World Series in them this year?
I don't know. Actually, although I lived in the Chicago area, I root against the Cubs, and that helps me keep my sanity here. So I predict confidently the Cubs will not be in the World Series this year, and that makes me happy.
Well, way to go on a limb there.
I am a Cardinal fan, and I tell you though, they did surprise me last year. They went all the way. They go all the way. Was it last year? Amazing come from behind victories there. You want a comparison? Compare the Cardinals versus the Cubs. The Cardinals. No team wins all that often, except for perhaps the Yankees. But the Cardinals have won more than their fair share, and certainly the Cubs, have not won at all, right? Since 1908.
That's right. So we got that question out of the way, and we'll try to get some more of these. First of all, if you're not a subscriber, please do so. Just type in MISH in Google. Go to that page, and there's a subscribe by email in the top left-hand corner. Click on that, and you'll get all kinds of commentary every single day. And I think it's every day. At least every time I look at my BlackBerry, I have something.
I write about 4 times a day, actually. On weekends, 2 or 3, maybe. Even on Christmas, I'll put out a brief Merry Christmas post. So I probably write close to 365 days a year, actually.
Well, I know every time, like I said, I pick up my phone, I have a new update from you. So I appreciate your hard work. Listen, I want to get this in here, and I want to do it now because I don't want to run out of time. I'm running through and I was going to make a joke about it's the first time I've ever agreed with Bloomberg, CNBC, and the New York Times when they've written about something, but because they were all written glowing reports of your analysis, I agree with them all. But I see on here that you are conducting a fundraiser to battle ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and your wife had recently passed away from that. So my condolences, first of all, and tell me how I can support this battle against ALS, and I'll be personally myself, I'm going to immediately after the program make a donation to your efforts.
Thank you very much for bringing that up. ALS is Lou Gehrig's disease. That's what he died from in the 30s. So, and it's a degenerative disease. There's no cure for it. In the case of my wife, Joanne, it started out as a small slur in her voice, and I thought it was a stroke, actually, but strokes don't get worse. They never improve, but they don't get worse. And this, over time, she started slurring more words, and after about a year, she couldn't talk. But she could still walk. She could walk 3 miles. She could even golf. But slowly but surely, the body sends commands. You don't think about it. You go to raise your hand. You're not thinking, I'm trying to raise my hand. You raise your hand and it just raises. And you've got Lou Gehrig's disease. Well, you raise the hand and maybe it doesn't raise. It doesn't go anywhere. Towards the end, she had to use her right hand to pick up her left hand. She lost the ability to talk after about a year. So, and in the last month or so, she lost the ability to walk. And in the last week, she was essentially a quadriplegic. She couldn't move. So, very, very difficult last month for me. So, and her father died of it, and her grandfather died of it. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to do a benefit, a fundraiser here for the Les Turner ALS Foundation. I've raised something like $222,000 actually so far for the foundation. And Sitka Pacific Capital Management, my own company, kicked in $10,000 donation. Had one $10,000 anonymous donation. I've got a huge donation, up to $100,000 coming in from someone that I can't talk about right now until that's finalized. But all of this money is going to support research. Money's come in. People read my blog. Money's come in from 40 countries around the world, countries people wouldn't even recognize, Estonia, Uzbekistan. I mean, how many people in the United States have ever heard of Uzbekistan? Here they are donating, to my blog because they read it. And you can find that post real easy if you do a Google search for MISH and lilac. And I did a post the day after my wife died on May 16th. I did a post called Stop and Smell the Lilacs. It was called, my wife Joanne just passed away, Stop and Smell the Lilacs. Lilacs were her favorite flower. I've got an image of her out there. And so if you just do a Google search for MISH and lilac, it'll take you to that post, and that will tell you, how you can make a cash contribution to the Les Turner ALS Foundation, or you can also buy a raffle ticket. I'm doing a raffle where half of the money goes to people buying lottery tickets, half of the money goes to the benefit of the Les Turner ALS Foundation.
And I see you 296,400 in tickets.
And
so,
half of that, so 300,000. We've got about 2,000 ticket purchases, and 20% of that's going to go to the winner, and 5% at minimum to even 10th place. Well, look at it this way. There's roughly 2,000 tickets sold so far. I don't know what we're going to get, and it's running through September. But if the contest were to end right now, the top person would win about 40,000, and the bottom person would win 5,000 or something, 10,000, I think.
Yeah.
So anyway, so on a $200 chance, you've got a 1 in 200 odds of winning a very, very big prize. Beats the hell out of the Illinois State Lottery or whatever lottery you're in.
Or the recovery lottery. Mish, my hat's off to you. I mean, it's incredible. It's $250,000 you've raised, and this is right on the heels of your wife passing. So that's a true test of character that you can get right out there. Literally made and now. I mean, almost no time at all, $250,000. So congratulations.
Thanks much. I suspect when I've got this other announcement coming up that we're going to get this total up to $500,000, perhaps $750,000. Pretty cool.
Good. And here's the thing. Like I said, I've subscribed to you for a long time now. And yes, your newsletter goes out with some banner ads and that kind of thing. Mine does as well. But you never hammer people for money. So I'm really glad that all your hard effort, the people are realizing it in 40 different nations and contributing. And I'm going to contribute just because I feel that you deserve something for the effort that you put in every single day in putting out this information. And what a better way to support what you're doing than support something that you really believe in. So, congratulations on the success you're having on that. And again, the program, my condolences, the program condolences for your loss. But you're handling it like a true champion. So, all right, let's move on if you don't mind. I'd like to maybe get into some more of these questions, but we covered in the first half certainly the situation, the dire situation in Europe, the sovereign debt crisis that is going to affect us instantaneously. It's not going to be weeks or months down the road. It will rubber will hit the road all together at the same time. What do you think, Mike Mish Shedlock? What do you think needs to be done? And I'm looking at the clock here. We have about 10 minutes left, so I'm kind of preparing these questions down. What do you think needs to be done in order to turn this around? Is it as simple as Glass-Steagall reinstituted in our country? Is it as simple as breaking up these too big to fail institutions and truly regulating, not calling for more regulation, but regulate, enforce the laws that we have and break up this iron grip that finance has over
I
government.
don't think Glass-Steagall is a scapegoat. Now, I'm in favor of reinstituting it, but if you just look at Glass-Steagall and say, had it been in place, would it have stopped any bit of the mortgage crisis? And I challenge anyone to send me an email and tell me how. I actually did a post on this and said, well, it wouldn't have stopped these mortgage securitizations. Glass-Steagall is about putting in a firewall, between various divisions of companies to do things. Glass-Steagall might very well have stopped the LIBOR crisis, but Glass-Steagall would not have stopped the great financial crisis. Actually, there's a number of things that we can do, and actually a number of things that are the same in Europe and the United States. Look at what the problem in Spain and Italy is, and it's one of the same problems we have here in the United States. It has to do with public unions. Public unions are at the center of Greece, as a matter of fact, and France is going the wrong way at it. They reduced the pension age, the age at which someone could collect a pension, from 62 years down to 60. So you got people retiring in public unions that don't get to retire in private life with these massive guaranteed pensions. And it's especially bad with police and fire. These guys are retiring at age 55 or 58. They collect more money in retirement than they ever made in their real life. And taxpayers, are supporting that. We need to get rid of prevailing wage laws. Prevailing wage laws are killing cities. You want to go to a project, you want to put in a road, you want to repair a sidewalk. If you've got prevailing wage laws, that means you've got to hire a union person to do that. So cities have to pay $50 an hour, maybe, to put in a sidewalk when someone else, competent, maybe even a minority business might be willing to go out there and put that in and do that job for $10 or $12 or $15 an hour. So cities are paying 3, 4, 5 times more than what they ought to be paying. So but if you want to really look at the root, so that's one of the things. We need to get rid of collective bargaining. We need to scrap Davis-Bacon and all prevailing wage laws. We need to kill all of these defined benefit pension plans, where these public workers are retiring with $300,000 a year pension plans. The list in California is enormous on that. But, we also need to do some other things. We need to understand that the root cause of this whole thing is fractional reserve lending. Banks are allowed to actually create credit at will. They can go out and give a loan, and the reserves come by later. The Fed will supply any needed reserves for any loans that banks want to make. The bank makes a loan, a housing loan for $500,000 that gets redeposited back into the system, and the money is lent out over and over again. Now, that's the money multiplier theory, which I've argued against on my blog many times, but fractional reserve lending is actually the enabler for all of that. So that's what we need to do. We need to go back on a gold standard. The U.S. trade deficit started soaring when Nixon took the United States off the gold standard, when stopped redeeming dollars for gold. De Gaulle, tried to turn in all of these dollars that France was accumulating because the U.S. deficit with France was soaring. De Gaulle said, okay, send us your gold. And Nixon said, sorry, you're not going to get our gold. And we've been struggling with that ever since. And look, we are losing jobs to China right now. We've got a massive trade deficit to China that would actually go away if we would return to the gold standard. Why? Because China, we couldn't buy more from China than they sold to us, and vice versa over time, although there can be short-term imbalances. So instead, we've got Mitt Romney out there saying he's going to come in and label China a currency manipulator, put on these massive tariffs, and try and go at, it's attacking the wrong problem. I think we're going to have a collapse in global trade if Romney wins the election, and he does what he says he's going to do, fight more wars and put huge tariffs on China. Exactly
No
the
doubt
wrong
about it.
approach. We need to figure out. We need to attack the structural problems. We've got two. We've got three. We've got public unions. We have the trade deficit, caused by gold, and we've got fractional reserve lending. Those are the three things we need to fix. Instead, we're attempting to fix. Instead, we are attacking symptoms of the problem.
Yeah, I agree, especially on the fractional reserve banking. Let me ask you this, because gold, as soon as you mentioned gold, a lot of folks came in asking in the chat, where would gold be if we went back on the gold standard? But let me ask you, is it just the gold standard, or is it more important to have a true constitutional currency where government is setting the value of it, not a quasi-government agency like the Federal Reserve? I mean, yes, backed by something tangible, something that you can't fudge, but not having a quasi government agency determining the value of it. I mean, do we not need to return to true sound money?
We do need to return to true sound money, but the market's the only thing that can set a price of it. In terms of the U.S. dollar, a U.S. Gold should not be defined in terms of a dollar, or the dollar in terms of gold, other than $1 should represent X amount of gold, not any value thereof. I mean, Ron Paul would say the same thing. By the way, I'm writing in Ron Paul just because I can't stand it. I don't mean to blast Mitt Romney. I don't like Romney, and I don't like President Obama. I can't vote for either one of them, so I'm going to write in Ron Paul. He wants to bring back sound currency. He wants to eliminate the Fed. Those are the things that I really think need to be done, in addition to reining in public unions. No doubt
about it.
But fractional of the two, actually, I think killing fractional reserve lending is probably would do more for the United States than returning to the gold standard.
Well, I agree with you, and one thing that you kind of hit on, but I would definitely label in there is this, and Ron Paul would agree with me on this, is this waging of global wars. I mean, we're spending $1 trillion a year, and I believe that's a conservative estimate, trying to be the policeman of the world, entering every sandlot around this planet.
We cannot afford it. Absolutely. Oh, and Romney wants to increase the military spending. It is totally crazy. Someone that's a moderate and on this would be someone like Senator Tom Coburn, and but unfortunately, he was shouted out during these compromise meetings that we had last fall, and instead we've got two extreme sides, Democrats and the Republicans. The Democrats don't want to give up on entitlements. The Republicans don't want to give in on any tax hikes, and they want more funding for military spending. So,
but isn't it amazing?
We in a state of gridlock here now for another 4 years.
That's exactly, there's my conspiratorial side. I'm obviously more on that side than you. I mean, it's designed gridlock. I mean, come on, Mike. We need a super committee. We need a super Congress. We need a gang of 12 plus the president, because we can't. 535 members of Congress just are locked in gridlock. It's ludicrous. I mean, these people are supposed to be the representatives of the citizens of the United States, and regardless of what team is up at bat, red or blue, we end up with the same thing. We end up with a government spending $1.4 trillion a year more than it takes in.
More wars, more military spending.
That's right.
Here's the deal. Both sides are against having a huge deficit, yet we have it.
That's right.
That's the bottom line, right?
That's the bottom line. There is no small government party. There is no true conservatives
Ron Paul, there's others, but they can't make headway. And I would tell you right now, I mean, one of the compromises that I would make, if I could, in a flash, would be, okay, I'll take higher taxes if you are willing to scrap collective bargaining of public unions, if you are willing to scrap Davis-Bacon prevailing wage laws, and if you are willing to institute national right-to-work laws. Why would I do that? Because if we did those things, we would start the economy on the road to recovery, where down the road we could reduce those taxes again. So,
Without a doubt.
that's a trade-off that I would be willing to make, even if my own taxes went up. Because I think it's that important to get rid of those things that I said, that big of a structural problem. Collective bargaining of public unions is an absolute killer.
All right, Mike, I greatly appreciate it. We're about to run out of time. I would certainly throw in the fractional reserve system. Mike Mish Shedlock. Go to Google, type in Mish, subscribe to his newsletter. Tons of good information every day. Guys, enjoy Jeff Rense. He's coming up next. Have a good night. Peace.